the coach. His name was Dustin Felder, because remember, it was an acting class I had never done. So he was like, stand-up comedy is your into the industry.
Of all the teachers, I said the one guy that really made an impact that was palpable and tangible and gave me a different outlook was Bill Hall.
My dad, he's been in law enforcement for over 20 years. He taught like the 4 rules of gun safety.
It was always the meth, but like right out of the gate, it was Carter and Keith Hernandez. Those were the guys.
You know, I just want to say thank you. I've been watching you since I was a kid. Like I watched the Chappelle Show, and we would recite that shit all the time.
It surprised me how much I enjoyed. I coached my daughter's softball team this year. It was one of the best times of my life.
I dedicated this to Angela because I would not have done any of the stuff that I've been doing had it not been for her.
Sup? Welcome to episode number 147 of the People We Love podcast. I am Adam Choate. If you're new here, what I do is interview people from all walks of life, most often comedians and other entertainment types, creative types, about their lives and careers. The conversation is casual, but I also ask everyone to highlight the people they love, who they admire, who've influenced them, who've inspired them, or supported them. For more, check out peoplewelovepodcast.com. Please subscribe on whatever platform you listen to podcasts on. Please subscribe on YouTube. I appreciate that. I am at Adam Choate on Instagram and Twitter. If you'd like to follow me, adamchoate.com for all my personal stuff, social media, other projects. It's all there. Today we have Colorado's own Libertarian Party Congressional candidate for Colorado's 3rd District, James Wiley, running in 2024 against Republican Lauren Boebert and Democrat Adam Frisch. James is a passionate firebrand with professional experience in technology, finance, and marketing. Growing up primarily in Kazakhstan with his family on a post-Soviet missionary journey, this is where James learned many life skills and lessons from his unique life experience. He loves his family, and in this episode tells me all about them, and especially the huge impact James's dad, Ron, has had on him throughout his life. We talk deep about peace, love, politics, and more. So let's just get started. Here's James Wiley. Okay, so it's good to see you today, James Wiley. Thank you for joining me. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Adam. Great to be here.
Oh, for sure. How are you holding up during whatever year this is?
Oh, 2023 has been the best so far. I'm definitely looking forward to 2024 and everything it's got to offer. But I gotta think this year it's definitely come with its roller coasters and excitement and monsters around the corner that get to surprise you and keep you on your toes. But I'm really grateful for that, and I know it can only get better from here.
That's a great attitude. Not everyone has that. It sounds like maybe we're gonna get into it, but it sounds, I mean, even just looking at your bio, that maybe this year things have been more promising. Just in for yourself and maybe the world and Colorado. But let's get into it. Let's dive into it. Tell me a little bit about yourself and your background and where you grew up. I kind of like for people to hear people's even like earliest memories. Looking at your story, it looks like you have an interesting story where you were born in the States and then went back to the Soviet Union and stayed in somewhere. What year did the Soviet Union actually fall? Exactly. I mean,
so the way I tried to track this is my sister is 7 years older than me, and she was born on the same day that there was a large massacre within Kazakhstan. It's registered as our Independence Day. So if she's 7 years older than me, that would have been 1986 that Kazakhstan had that revolution, and a year later they actually had their declared Independence Day. And so it was late 80s that these republics started to break off of the Soviet Union, including the Republic of Kazakhstan. And that's when it started to get the attention of my parents. And in the early 90s, they began to consider moving to the former Soviet Union. They did travel and visit before going ahead and taking all of his kids. But it was 3 months after I was born, so February of 1994, that I actually ended up having the pleasure of moving to Kazakhstan and experiencing that adventure there. One of my earliest memories was when I was just 7 years old. And being an expat, my parents were still American citizens and American voters and very much engaged in the United States political process. And when I was just 7 years old, I had a celebration for my birthday, which happened to coincide exactly with the election in the United States. So we had election-themed party. Why not? But if you're going to decorate red, white, and blue, you actually have to have red, white, and blue decorations shipped from America. So in preparation for my birthday, my parents made the plans to have all these decorations put up for my birthday to celebrate the American election in 2000. And we had the decorations up for the birthday. Great celebration, everything. We were waiting to hear the results of the election. 1 day passed, 2 day passed, 3 day passed, 4 day passed, 5 day passed. We had the decorations up all week because we didn't know who our new president was going to be. And while this was just an early formational memory of mine, I remember, of course, the decorations up on the walls and the ceiling. It was the whole house that we did for this big event, which was bigger than just my birthday. It was the election.
What year did you say this was?
This was 2000. This was Bush v. Gore.
Right.
So we're waiting on the recounts and.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say. So you were 7 years old, and it was the Bush Gore election in 2000.
Exactly.
Gotcha. Okay, so you're waiting on.
Formative memory. Election machines were stealing my civil rights. I wasn't expressing my civil rights at the time, but my parents were, and their votes were being corrupted by voting machines in Florida. And so I didn't know it at the time, but that would be one of the fundamental formational elements that would later determine a great portion of how I would continue to express myself and advocate for my own and other people's civil rights. And so it was just a few months ago, I was reflecting back on that memory and realized how formational it was for me and how that really brought me to later engage with the voting machines and to be engaged in active litigation with them, which unfortunately we have lost against Dominion voting systems. But the result of the case out of Georgia just this last week, which declared that Dominion voting systems, by the nature of the machine, violates people's civil rights and can no longer be used in elections. That is the ultimate victory that we were going for. And so all the defeats along the way, while devastating, we all know that we were fighting for a greater cause, and that cause is inevitable, and that justice is inevitable. And it's nice to see other people gaining victory where we gain defeat, but that doesn't end the battle, and more battles to come. And so we continue to fight, and James for Peace is the next battle for me.
Very cool. I appreciate you sharing all. I want to go back even just to get some of the history behind, I guess, your family. So they're from Kazakhstan originally, I'm guessing, and then they wanted to go back after the Soviet, blocs and all the countries in Kazakhstan essentially gained independence. Is that what happened? They're from that part of the world originally, and we're always kind of thinking about going back.
My parents were actually from America. Their inspiration to move to the Soviet Union came for their passion for Jesus Christ, and they chose to be evangelical missionaries and moved to Kazakhstan. And so that's where I was for 15 years between Kazakhstan and the United States. We would come back every 3-4 years and visit family and supporters and other things. And so I did get to experience life in Kazakhstan in contrast to what was developing into a capitalist society, transitioning from communist to capitalist. And so I got to see what was interestingly two opposite economic states, each in pursuit of the other over the course of my life. So we had the communist country formerly communist country of Kazakhstan seeking to become capitalist and experiencing the benefit of that process. And we have the formerly capitalist country of the United States of America seeking to become communist and experience the tyranny of that process. And so I've seen these two opposite parallels in opposite directions. And so I'm calling out to my American brothers and sisters, stop, let's not go this direction. Communism isn't what it's made out to be. I think we could all live better as free people. And so trying to share some of that message.
That's great. Everyone who's experienced that type of governance and economic systems, like whether it be South America or Eastern Bloc countries, always comes to the United States with a different attitude about economics, really, a healthier one and and an eye, a vigilant eye, so to speak, towards communism, socialism, authoritarianism, and especially in economic forms, just more sensitive to that is what you notice. Yeah, that's such a interesting background that you have. I forgot what I was going to ask about. Something about Kazakhstan. Just wow, that's wild that you were there. It just sounds like what they were part of a program or a church or something that kind of sent them there. Because there's missionaries that go all over the world. And I'm guessing it was partly because like there was a lot of turmoil and I'm guessing some level amount of instability. So like that's an opportunity to spread the word and establish just like a culture, establish a culture. I don't know, or more of a culture. What was I guess I want more details of how and why Kazakhstan.
It's such a beautiful place and such a beautiful people that I can see why my parents chose to go there. One of the key elements that made it such a fertile ground for the cause that they were passionate about bringing forward was the fact that communism in its essential essence is the pulverization of all goodness. And that includes culture, that includes religion, that includes relationship, that includes any kind of trust, any kind of beauty, any kind of love that exists in the world. Communism is an agent of destruction and chaos, and will pulverize any positive expression of goodness that exists in this world. And that includes the family unit, that includes the religious unit, the religious community, the supportive community, the community of morality. It includes economic communities, it includes business relationships, it includes supply chains. Those are expressions of love and expressions of self-interest as well, and self-love in an economic capacity, but also a care for the people who work for you and the care for the people who you work for. And communism obliterates all of that. And so you've got to appreciate, in the wake of this system that was collapsing, how people were seeking every level and every degree of humanity that had been withheld from them for so long. And what I really appreciate is my parents went and sought to minister to the spiritual element, but didn't neglect at the same time some of those physical needs and mental needs that the people had and had been so deprived of sustenance from. So my dad did have the pleasure and opportunity to develop capitalistic educational programming, so microcredit loan program, where he would give a family a few $100s to buy a cow and then help them with a business plan and every little aspect of becoming self-sustaining and self-reliant once again, instead of depending on the government to slowly starve you, which was the only choice before. Now people could take their destiny into their own hands and actually act to improve their condition and act for their own self-interest and become personally responsible over their destiny. And that is an awakening moment. We think we're going through an awakening. Wait until the extreme far left commies who have been starving themselves intentionally, thinking that that's what's good for themselves and everybody around them, start to come around and start to experience that liberation here in the United States. They're going to be truly awakened at that point. We were born woke in a sense. We didn't need that, but I'm really grateful for that approach that they took, ministering to all the needs of the people there. And bringing that capitalistic philosophy and mental processes that had been so sapped out of the society, bringing that back into the fold. And there's, of course, a lot of corruption and other things like that. And people were able to, despite the corruption, still work and develop themselves into sustainable businesses and in rural communities where all that community used to be was a single collective farm. That whole community was one farm. And everybody starved on that farm. So I'm really grateful for that experience. Very formative for me, and it's brought me with some weaponry and some knowledge that I can really express against the communist entity. So I'm grateful for that.
Yeah, just from personal experiences. What are your parents' names?
Ron and Janine.
You have siblings also?
I do.
Yeah. And what are their ages, and where do you fit in there?
I'm the youngest. They're all older than me. I've older sisters.
How many?
3.
3.
So
Okay, that's
I was babied and taken care of, and probably spoiled quite a bit by my sisters, and of course they're jealous because being the only guy, my restrictions were much lower than my sisters for reasonable protective reasons. But yeah, it was fun growing up as the baby.
That's what I was gonna say. As a guy, and especially as the youngest, it's like you're gonna there's just you're just less precious. Not that you're not precious, you're just less precious. I'm guessing.
I'm less fragile, so I got
true, I guess.
Thrown to the wolves a little bit. I'm grateful for that. I needed that experience.
It's
beautiful.
It's interesting to hear you talk about you coming from a missionary family and talking about the virtues of capitalism, which is like obviously capitalism's a dirty word to many, especially on the left, of course, and also like religion and spreading Christianity or whatever branch you are of the faith. Like that's something that carries a negative connotation to a lot of people, and that's sad that like people can't see the greater, like the process of people don't get this always the impressions that what's really going on is what you're describing, which is a great thing. You probably were not even, your parents were probably not even using the word capitalism or calling what they were doing capitalism. They were just acting in a caring, what do they say?
Mm-hmm.
Compassionate capitalism. What's the word? Compassionate. What's that? I forget what the term I'm thinking of, that like brands or companies business types use. Compassionate conservatism, whatever the business version is that. But yeah, that's what it sounds like your parents were doing, is just being good people and sharing knowledge. They were teaching a man to fish, essentially.
Yeah, exactly. My dad grew up on a ranch, was a farmer his whole life, and got a degree in agriculture and a master's in genetics. And so even though he was focusing on the business and spiritual aspects of personal development and actually teaching English alongside, so doing everything really in those early years, he was able to relate with the people in the actual technical aspects of what they were doing. So not just say, here, you need to manage your money this way, or this is what the loan's about, but actually engaging with them in the subject of how they should feed their cow and what kind of hay is best, and how you should develop the hay and treat the hay. And so he was able to build a relationship in that element and really relate with them on a human and a personal level. So, and that's what I'm so, I keep saying this again and again, and there's an infinite well of gratitude that continues to feed my soul for this experience, is that the relational focus on people. I like to think I learned everything I'm applying now from my parents, and I think everybody is ultimately a product, and we can't really fall that far from the tree no matter how hard we try. And so all of my political campaigning and civil rights activism and everything that I've done has come out of those same roots, and my interest in business and my MBA and my management degrees all came out of an interest in serving people and helping them with their businesses and to succeed and operate better in an environment that can often be confusing and challenging and overwhelming for some people who just want to do what they're passionate about, to feed their family through their passions and to overcome the business aspect. So I like to be able to serve them in that capacity, but the political element as well, of going around and meeting people and listening to their stories and finding ways to support and care for them. I think that's really what a politician's duty is. And that's not what we see from politicians in the modern day, but the combination of like the missionary and the leader is what a politician needs to be. Somebody who's ministering to the needs of their community, to the needs of their delegates. So I want to minister to my community, to Pueblo, to District 3. I'm technically a minister. I do funerals and weddings, but my main focus is political ministry and ensuring that people are learning about and have the opportunity to know those true and foundational libertarian principles, which safeguard all of society, and all of our freedoms of spiritual, physical, and mental expression are safeguarded by those principles of liberty. So I'm glad to be the vessel of those principles and to make them my cause, and peace and liberty. That's what I'm going for here.
Very cool stuff. You're good with the words and the speakers and expressing yourself and what your goals and values are, and even just in just what you were just saying moments ago. I almost want to ask you two questions because I want to go in different directions. So maybe these can be combined. But I do want to hear more about your mom. I'm just curious about your mom because you talked a lot about your dad, and I want to know a little bit more about like what kind of kid were you? I'm guessing that you were probably already pretty thoughtful, introspective, thinking about deeper things. And I don't know about the kids in Kazakhstan, I can't speak to, but you certainly, I'm guessing, were a little bit deeper, more introspective, thoughtful than the average 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, whatever. We'll get into the ages, what kind of kid you were, but I'm just guessing. But yeah, I want to know more about your mom and kind of what your childhood was like. What were you into, and what kind of student were you, and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, my mom was a stay-at-home mom. She got her degree in nutrition and also later a master's degree in organizational leadership. My dad and my mom pursued that at the same time. It was really cool to see them study that together and to team up hand in hand and learning that and acquiring that, and then of course using that as a resource to serve the community that they were a part of. And so not just staying at home, but engaging actively in the ministry was always a part of my mom's purpose and her work. And I'm really grateful for that example as well, because it's more than just supporting my dad and what he wanted to do. They made these decisions together, they made the commitments together, and they fulfilled those commitments together. And so that was really inspiring to see from her. And I'm grateful for that example as well, for my sisters, who have all grown up to be lovely and wonderful women. And in my early years, so getting into the second question, yeah, it was an interesting environment that helped develop me in very specific ways. You say a lot of introspection, like being thoughtful. Well, given I was growing up in an area with different language being spoken outside of the home versus inside of the home, it becomes a challenge somewhat to relate outside of the home. So I did kind of draw into myself and become very content with my own thoughts and ideas for many years. I did relate to the community, had lots of friends in the community, but from early on, I would probably enjoy my own company just as much as any others. And so that's been a strength as well as a feature and maybe a weakness at times of mine. But growing up in that environment, it kind of causes you to be content with not knowing what's going on, and to just go with the flow. And even if you can't understand anybody, you can smile at them and they can smile at you. And that's the way the world works, is you share a little bit of love and other people will too. And that's about all it takes to stop war, actually, is just a little bit of that. So even if you can't understand or communicate. Yeah.
I've had that thought recently. And I thought, like, it's like I think there's like a conspiracy theory against love, and to delegitimize it, like maybe even with like the hippie movement and just like keychains with peace and love. It's in some ways it's like the mainstream wants to make it like a silly like they turn it into a what do you call it, a impossible ideal. So it's like just like a decoration as opposed to a reality that's achievable, at least in a meaningful way, where, yeah, there's going to be conflict in the world, but we don't need to be like dropping bombs and massacring each other to deal with political conflicts. That's just silly.
Yeah, love is the opposite of equity, actually, because equity is like everybody gets their fair share, and love is we're all the same. So what is mine is yours. What is yours is mine. I'm not saying in a communist sense, but in a charitable capacity. So I'm not drawing the line of my boundary of my skin here and the boundary of your skin there. I'm you and you are me. We are both humans here to share this planet, to share this endowment from our Father, and to find the best way to navigate this journey of life. And so love kind of takes away that boundary of duality and brings us back into that state of unity, which for a human is very difficult to entertain at times because of the dominating capacities of our lower nature over our mind, our limbic system, fight or flight, all these things kind of push love to the side. But love is at the same time an overriding and underlying at the same time nature of reality, where it can't be avoided. It's the inevitable correction back to love. And when we look at even the more primal animals, how the cry from their child activates something in them where they sacrifice their own being for the sake of their child, their cub, or whichever kind of animal that is. And we have evolved that to an extreme high degree where our capacity for love, given our intellect to contemplate the expansiveness of our world, our teeny tiny world, our capacity for love can embrace that entire planet. It can embrace all people. It's not like as human beings, we only have a capacity to love 3 people. I know families with 10 kids. There's probably more love in that family than most families with 3 kids, just because there's so much opportunity for sharing a burden, for charitable giving, for loving support in that type of environment. And I don't want to expand communism to the whole world, because that would be the expansion of hate to everywhere. But I do want to expand that principle of love and peace everywhere. And there's no reason why we can't expand our cup. We don't just have this much love to give. We have an infinite amount to give. And if we include all of our human brothers and sisters in our family of love and peace, then that's when the non-aggression principle really starts to take place, because there won't be war.
Man, we're speaking what really this is your on brand. This is your brand, and I'm impressed and inspired. Like, that's so cool just for me to hear that right now as we're recording this stuff. What I don't like is, because you did say that humans do have a tendency to stray from these ideas and stray towards the opposite, the negative feelings toward each other. But when that's exploited, that's what makes me especially mad, when it's exploited by those in power, intentionally dividing us, distracting us, stirring up hate, gaslighting, fanning flames of division. Like, that's the stuff that I find especially repulsive and awful. Do you speak Kazakh or the language at all? Did you go to an American school?
Yeah, my school was primarily English speaking. I did take classes in other languages, and I had friends outside of school who I spoke different languages. Early on, out in the rural communities where we lived, I learned to speak Kazakh and understand Kazakh. But as we moved into the city was mostly dominated by Russian speaking. And so that kind of got overridden by Russian speaking as I was getting into school and whatnot. So I do speak Russian. I do understand Russian, but it's been a long time. I've been in America for 15 years now, so I'm losing a lot of that, unfortunately, and I should probably practice more to try to retain it.
So a little Kazakh, but not too much. Then Russian for a while, but now you're kind of losing that, and just American English basically at this point. Is that kind of where we're at with the languages?
Yeah. If I was immersed in the environment, it would come back to me. I'm sure, but. It's only when I'm in the Polish market or something that I really geek out on starting to remember the words and all the delicious foods and everything.
What year did you say and how old were you when you came back to the States, your family? How old were you?
15 in 2009.
And your whole family came back?
Yes, my sisters were older than me, and they had all graduated and got off to college in America. And I was coming into my junior year of high school. And one of my great aunts her health was beginning to deteriorate, and so there was a draw to be closer to home. And my parents were part of her caregiving team for several years, and so I was grateful to be back in the United States to be able to care for that other generation, and to finish up school as well. So I went to the Pueblo Technical Academy my junior year. Unfortunately, they shut down, so I ended up transferring to Pueblo County High School, which was an amazing experience to graduate from the same high school as my dad out in the county. So that was really cool. I'm a Hornets, go Hornets, green and gold. And so I graduated in 2011, went off to school at CU Boulder, Buffaloes. Never actually saw a football game, even though I sold a bunch of pretzels as a pretzel stand manager up there for a couple of years. I studied computer science and biology for 2 years, took a year off to just focus on work and to try to catch up on some of those growing student loans. At that point, I recognized that the subject matter I was studying, which was biology. I had transitioned from computer science to biology. I was really interested in the sciences, always wanted to be an engineer from my youth, but I was recognizing from a project I was involved in. I was doing development work for a small business startup in Boulder, and I was recognizing that this guy was getting his business degree, and I was getting my science degree. And he was coming up with the ideas and telling me what to do. And I was trying to figure out how to implement his ideas. I'm like, how do I get on the other side of that? So when I transferred and came back to school in Pueblo, I graduated from CSU Pueblo ultimately in 2017 with my management and marketing degree and my MBA. I did focus on that business aspect because I wanted to figure out how to engineer systems of creation, systems of production. And that's what a business is. And so I'm still very much an engineer mind, but I'm applying that to social systems, social interactions, social engineering in the sense of developing organizational functions, whether nonprofit, political organizations, PACs, political parties, or businesses in a more basic sense, that are each targeted at accomplishing a specific goal and purpose in the world.
We need that. We need people with those skills and knowledge and have that knowledge with your ideology and how much you care about people in the world. We need more of that. How did you feel though when your family was moving? I mean, obviously it was kind of like, it sounds like, I mean, your family sounds like great people who just kind of like go where the mission is and where the universe takes them, where the Lord takes them, kind of thing, where help is needed. But was part of you upset leaving Kazakhstan or wanting to stay, or were you ready to go? And you seem like somebody who rolls with the punches, but it's hard for any kid to move, teenager. Like, what were your thoughts about that time period and feelings?
Great. Without quite turning into a therapy session, so that was definitely a somewhat traumatic transition for me because I was pulled out of my own world, but I actually did want that. So I did want a fresh opportunity to start new, and so, but that doesn't discount some of the trauma involved in having to find all new friends and relate to people in a different country. And I can speak English, which is a great benefit, but at the same time that creates a certain expectation that I know what people are talking about when they're talking about the American culture and everything that was involved in youth. Fortunately, there's South Park, and so I was well educated on South Park, which is located here in Colorado, and so I did have a little bit of a cultural exposure to Americanism from a young teen age when I first started watching South Park and playing World of Warcraft and everything that kids do, and back in the 2000s. So I'm grateful for that, but coming to America, getting all new friends, it was difficult phase. I'm really grateful for that phase though, because I came out of that with some lifelong friends. I'm still roommates with one of my old high school buddies who I first met when I moved here, and I attended a bunch of weddings from guys who I met that junior year of high school, and college fraternity brothers with some of them as well, and so those early relationships, first coming to America, even though, like you said, just go with the flow, and wherever God leads us, we're happy to serve. I'm grateful that in that moment God provided such great men around me to be my friends, and who are still my friends today.
I won't be putting this out before Thanksgiving, or probably not on Thanksgiving, but maybe shortly thereafter. Hopefully I can release this, but you are definitely, I feel like, the right person to be talking to right now. as we record this, the day before, the evening before Thanksgiving.
Thanks.
Like Thanksgiving Eve doesn't get a lot of attention as an event for people. I mean, it's like a night where everyone's coming back to town, and maybe people go to a bar or something like that in their hometown, like those kinds of things. Maybe in sitcom episodes you'll see, but it's not like a Christmas Eve. It's not like I don't know. It doesn't get the attention. But we're giving the Thanksgiving Eve the proper credit with the thankfulness and the gratitude, and I appreciate you sharing all this stuff. I mean, you were talking about some television and cultural, and just I get what you're saying. But when you were in Kazakhstan, I guess even as like a young teen, what were some of the things that you were interested? Just like maybe you were watching their TV shows or music, or you were just you seem like pretty academically savvy, and maybe you were an avid reader or something like that. What kind of stuff were you into as a kid, even like over there and whatnot?
Computers. Interestingly enough, that kind of connected me to the world. And so I was diagnosed early on with a learning disability, like everybody else in the 2000s. What learning disability can we label people with? So that kind of held me back from reading. Not that I couldn't read, but it gave me an excuse not to. So I didn't. I hung out with computers all the time, reading on computers instead of books, of course. So that was early on for me. I was able to get a hold of one of my parents' old clamshell iBooks. Those old Apple computers, and through that I was able to first browse the internet and use dial-up and things like that, and so I really got to get exposed to the world. That's where I found Happy Tree Friends. That's where I found South Park and other really demented things like that. So I got some exposure to American culture and world culture through the internet, and I think all of us did. So European culture was brought to America, and vice versa during that early internet period. And so the internet was super slow, but I was grateful for that opportunity to be able to access information outside of the limited sphere in which I was growing up, and the culture of the community, which was very specific in the dogma and the ideology. And so I was exposed to different ideas, and as I got into college and out of college, then I did finally end up picking up reading and become that intellectual I guess I was always intended to be, as far as being able to understand ideas and complex philosophies and things like that. So early on, not as much, but ultimately, yes.
Oh yeah, I was gonna say I love how you're just a very articulate person with their thoughts and whatnot, but then you're just also so authentic and honest that you would use a phrase like "when I picked up reading." Like I wouldn't, because most people wouldn't even phrase it like that. They would say, "Oh, I've been getting into reading a lot of nonfiction."
Yeah.
Like they would just say, they would word it in a different way to make them sound smarter.
I read maybe this many books before I was 22, 23. And then I've read hundreds since then, but it just a lot of people don't tap into that, and it's unfortunate. And internet has really become a huge replacement for a lot of that direction. We need both, because a lot of things that have been written in the last 30 years are really not worth reading, much less the last 100 years or 200 years. Like, we really need to tap in some of that old wisdom and old knowledge to ground ourselves to reality, and to get us out of this heady space of this idealism, progressive idealism, that all, for whatever reason, the world's getting better. Why are we all of a sudden better than our ancestors? No, we're the exact same. We just have a different environment that we were born into. We need to be humble about that and the fragility of the environment we're born into. And if we do not sustain it, it will not be here for the next generation.
Part of me thinks about what people in the past, some of the great minds in the past, would think about the present. And I guess I think about it in a way as if, like, they're not going to, like, what if George Washington or Thomas Jefferson or someone even from further back just appeared in the United States today? What would they think about our government? Like, aside from the fact that they would be, like, shocked because of the technological investment and advancements, if one was able to give the context of, like, what's going on, if I was like, okay, George Washington, here's what's going on in America. We got this central bank, and we got all these things going on in war, and here's the deal. They would understand. They would understand us, I think on some level they'd be like, wait, no slavery anymore? What that? There'd be some cultural things and like some things like that. But like, I think on a ideas and broad broad understanding in terms of like the lens of liberty and how much freedom basically people have, like I think they would understand like this, like what the country's going through. So there's value, I think, in like we've been talking about, like all these thinkers from the past that seem to be that we want to like erase, like you're saying that the left, especially wants to erase, like, and maybe the right in a lot of ways can hold some flawed people up in regard. Whereas like, I think, why can't we just be honest about everything? Just be like, what you either want to tear statues down, or maybe we shouldn't be building so many statues. Can we learn from people without idolizing? I'm not like a huge fan of statues. Like it's something about, I don't know. It seems a little bit like it's like not. It's like, shouldn't that be like for, like, I don't know, you're almost like worshiping a person over, like, I don't know, this your creator in some regard or something like that. What do you think about statues?
The people are mortal. No, that's a great statement, and I agree with you. The people are mortal, and there are people I revere, absolutely, and seek to embody and study their philosophy and try to capture their words and to do their actions, and that is such an important archetype for us to seek to fulfill in this time of critical opportunity. Is we need to try to be like those people who did important things at a time that it was important to do those things. It's an important time all of a sudden again. We need to do important things. So we need to rely on the wisdom of the ages. We need to rely on George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, Adams, all these guys, Benjamin Franklin. I appreciate their philosophy and what they brought forward and what they studied, and I try to study the same things that they study because it inspired them with a fire and a passion to resist tyranny. And I'd probably say this on every single interview I do, but my favorite quote of all time is from Thomas Jefferson. And I was in D.C. on a pilgrimage in 2018, and I visited his memorial, and there I saw an inscription that is along the inside of that memorial there, that round dome at the south end of the lawn. And it says, "I have sworn upon the altar of God an eternal resistance towards any form of tyranny over the mind of man." And okay, like, where's that altar? I'll take that oath. I'm in. Yeah. So I want to encourage everybody to seek to become those men as best you can. Follow their footsteps. Study the things they studied. Thomas Jefferson read every single book that existed. He was a relatively rich man, had a big library, but he was an architect, a philosopher, esteemed lawyer. He pretty much did everything possible. And a lot of these guys were Renaissance men. Obviously, Benjamin Franklin, an inventor, a musician, you name it, he did it. So we need to try to be like the greatness of the ages. We're not all of a sudden better because we have internet. We are weaker because we have internet. We're dependent because we have internet. We can use internet to our benefit. We can use AI to our benefit. Obviously, those are important things for the current phase, and there's not going to be a victory without the utilization of those things. But it has to come from a depth. It has to come from a depth of philosophy. It has to come from roots that really inform the morality of what we're trying to accomplish. What happened this last weekend with Javier Milei and the victory in Argentina, and what happened after the victory, where people in the streets partying stopped, picked up their trash, and went home. That is a greater morality. That is libertarianism. That is Americanism. And we need to bring that back.
No, that's not Americanism, picking up trash.
It
should be.
It's going
Maybe
to be.
It used to be.
It's going to be. Yeah, it was, and that personal responsibility is coming back. And Argentina is America. They're more American than we are, right? They're in America, South America, but they're more American than we are because they're expressing a greater American morality than we are here in the United States. We could learn from Argentina. We could vote like Argentina. I would encourage you to do so, because if you do so, I'll get elected and I will stop the government tyranny and the wars and everything else.
We've strayed away from a lot of the ideals that we like even supposedly like would are supposed to uphold, and of course a lot of them have been like demonized. Like, even if you say, oh, I'm a freedom and liberty person, that, you know, there's a lot of perception that that's like if you're a freedom and liberty person who's a Christian missionary who's pro-capitalism, like those are naughty words to a lot of the population. But it's
to ignorant people, yes.
Right.
And unfortunately, that's not a lot of. I pray that that's not a lot of the population like you described. Sorry to interject here. It's so important for us to assume the best of humanity at this point, because if we assume the worst, we'll get what we deserve. It's really important for us to have a deep sense of hope at this critical stage, because even if we're wrong, yeah, we could all be deluded, and that delusion would be reality. If we're all deluded in the hope that we can be saved and that we don't have to go to World War III, all of a sudden we won't be in World War III. It just has to be an adopted perception and reality from all of us. And so, yeah, I know we're in tough times, and it's hard to be positive, and it's hard to assume on average that people are better. But the IQ hasn't gone down, because IQ is a relative quotient. So people are still relatively intelligent. I know we've had quite a few chemicals in our system and everything going against our ability to be moral recently. But that doesn't mean we can't bring that out again and begin to cultivate it.
A lot of it comes from and out of a culture, for sure. Is like, you know, we need to push these values more, and I think that's what, because I think most people are really just they're followers. So it's like, if you make something righteous the main thing, then more people will be righteous. If you make that the negative things become the lay of the land, or the common thing, or the cool thing, then that's what people follow. And I thought to something back you were talking about earlier with. I think it was in terms of economics, but it really applies to things like peace or spirituality or anything. It's just like these ideas of limits, and how we put limits as a species, as humanity, on ourselves. We do put limits on ourselves, but also we're told we have limits, and we're not set up by our leaders and people that unfortunately rule over us in a way to maximize our capability as a species, unfortunately. But yeah, there's hope. I think there's hope. You're giving me hope.
Hey, thanks. That's my main mission. And to reference Tony Hawk, you know, he was it the 720 or the 960. He was the first one to do the kickflip, and then there was the guy who was the first one to break the 4-minute mark on the mile. And immediately after it was done, everybody was doing it. It was the standard. Everybody could do that. It's possible. And so I want to be the 4-minute mile on hope. I want to be the guy who's so deluded into believing that he could do it, that I could actually win this election against Lauren Boebert and Adam Frisch. That delusion becomes the accepted reality. But I have to be so saturated in that reality, and I am, to where there's no doubt, there's no other option. I've got a career, and unfortunately, I've got to move to DC next year. That's definitely not what I want to do. Running for office is definitely not what I want to do, but that is what's next for me. And I'm confident in the inevitability of that victory, and so I'm willing to engage in the process and the sacrifice of running this race, or I like to say marching this race, because I'm not going to be running anything for 12 months straight. But I'm one of the things that I do, a part of my campaign is protesting, and I'm willing to march. I've been marching, and I'll be there this weekend, and that'll be my 4th march in a row there at the Colorado Capitol in Denver. And we just march around the building with these signs and call for peace. It's simple, but I'll be doing that until we get peace. So that could be a 12-month march. I'm engaged
You're
in.
marching forever, man. You're going to be marching forever. You're going to be in good shape. You look like you're in good shape, but you're going to be in good
I'll march
shape
until we win. Yeah. And then other people will need to march from there. Like, it'll never be over, but that's my commitment, is to march until we end the wars.
What I want to, I mean, I don't want to, we can't, there's so many topics and directions we can go in. I definitely want to get like some of your highlights and dive deeper more into the congressional stuff. And that's super exciting So that election, that's 2024.
Correct. November 5th.
Gotcha. I'm looking at your. We'll bring. You can bring me up to date in terms of your professional journey and some whatever highlights you want to share. But I am curious about looking at in 2016. It sounds like that, or it looks like that's kind of when you got involved in politics. You kind of discovered Bernie, having a bit of a, I'm guessing, a anti-establishment tinge in yourself or something like that. So I'm just curious about like your political journey, evolution, and we can get into that and go in the chronology, speak the chronology.
Yeah. So like I mentioned, Gary Johnson, I had the opportunity to meet him in 2012, shook his hand. He had filled up the math auditorium at CU Boulder all the way, maxed out.
But why are you there? How do you end up
There's no
there?
availability. I ended up there. I think my friend was talking about it, another fellow ginger, and we were a great team together. And he was talking about libertarianism, and I was really disenfranchised by the fact that Ron Paul had been kicked out of the Republican primary. I was caucusing for him as a Republican early on, and I was really frustrated by his philosophy not being accepted.
This was 2008 or
2012. Excuse me.
So this was 2012. Yeah. So
and
what led to you becoming politically? I guess you said you always.
It was Occupy. Yeah. I was protesting in Occupy, and I was very very much anti-government, on the border of communism. Honestly, I had communist thing on me coming. So definitely anti-government in that capacity, but more anti-government than communist. It's just the communists at the time were the most anti-government, so I was attracted to that. But coming out of that Ron Paul situation, voting libertarian, and that communism ideology never really took root. It was just a way for me to piss on the state, which ultimately communism is the state. So that showcases my ignorance, right? But so that 2012, that was coming from Ron Paul. He first introduced me to liberty. I saw this video by Clint Curtis where he was talking about the election fraud from 2000, and that really red pilled me to where I'm like, oh, it doesn't matter which party I'm in, it's going to be the same corruption either way. So I kind of let go of the ownership of the outcome of the election, and I wanted to participate according to my values, and that's what allowed me to go to the Libertarian Party. I knew my vote was wasted anyways because it was cheating. I knew that back in 2012, so I thought, let me waste it with the Libertarian Party, and I had that pleasure to do in 2012, again in 2016. 2016, I did get involved in Bernie Sanders' campaign, which again is like, Jim, you're really showing your communist colors. Well, I'm red, but the key is I was anti-Clinton. Just like early on, I was anti-state, which draw me to that. I was anti-Clinton in 2016, and I caucused for Bernie so that he would beat Clinton, because I thought Clinton would beat Trump or whoever else the Republicans brought out. And I was kind of lesser of evil at that point. Still going to vote Libertarian ultimately. But in this early stage, I could use my voter registration, and I shifted it to the Democratic Party. And I went to my local neighborhood middle school, Freed Elementary here in Pueblo, and I caucused with the Democrats. They had never seen me before. They haven't seen me since. I definitely made an impression there.
You might want to make that clearer on your website that that's what your plan was all along, because that sounds like a funny plan and a cool plan. And I think there's nothing wrong about being forthright with that, unless it'll encourage the state to change that plan, and that's a bad thing. But it makes it sound like you went through it makes it sound like you were going through some sort of you wanted to support the outsider candidate, I guess, but it doesn't make it necessary. I don't know if it's 100% clear. So then I immediately returned home. I guess so. Yeah, he said, "I'm copywriting right now." That's funny. But what I get out of this up to this point is that you do sound like someone who's pretty just an open-minded person, and is more interested, like you're saying, in the values and the issues and the politics themselves versus like party or who's saying what's wrong is wrong. Whether it's like you got red pilled in a lot of ways from the 2000 election, which was, where the Democrats, is what the story is. People think, saying, claiming. Like,
Bush
I
cheated.
haven't gone down that rabbit hole in a while.
They both cheated. Bush cheated more, though. That's how it went. Because Jeb Bush was governor of Florida at the time.
That sounds very. That makes me love this country more in some ways. Like that, I don't know, but that's bad. I've been hearing more and more like that's how there's a lot of other countries where like cheating is literally part of the culture. I'm sure you can speak to that in the Soviet bloc countries where it's like it's accepted in the culture, like that this person's trying to fuck me over, like the most they can. So I have to be immoral, and like that's a hard thing for me to like want to imagine being a part of. Keep telling me about the chronology. 2016.
Oh, sure.
Okay, so we're going back to
Russia collusion. Like that was another red pill. I'm like, holy cow, they really hate Trump. And so I actually registered Republican for a short period of time, just solidarity with Trump. That didn't last long because I saw how he was being attacked by Republicans. And he made a critical mistake in 2016. He joined the Republican Party. He should have joined the Libertarian Party. That would have been his natural home, but he joined the Republican Party. And he surrounded himself by snakes.
That is a really interesting thought, especially since he was funding himself largely. So the money from the party, I guess, is not necessarily an essential. And then thinking about the LP as ballot access, it probably would have ultimately failed, I would guess, because he would probably be too much. He would not listen to anyone. And the Mises Caucus was not as entrenched in 2016. It's an impossible thing anyway, because they wouldn't want him. Although
interesting to speculate.
But what was I don't even really know. It's probably not really what it was that he was a reality star. He was known for what
it was drain the swamp.
But
that was his promise. And he joined the Swamp Party and had the swamp creature navigating his swamp draining boat. Like, what are you going to accomplish, man? And when he got into office, basically he couldn't tell friend from foe. Like, if you see a libertarian, that's somebody you have some solidarity with. But I trust no Democrat. I trust no Republican. And he didn't trust Democrats, obviously, but he had to trust some Republicans, and a few too many.
I agree with all that, and that is true. I would say that is how ultimately, of course, things did play out with Trump. But but what you said before about like, what if Trump went to the LP? It makes me think about like, what was the perception of Trump before he became a political candidate for the GOP? What was the perception from like the average Democrat person? Was just like, oh, he's just a reality star. He's a little sleazy and a little crass and has funny hair, but they didn't have this like ferocious hatred towards him.
I thought he was a Democrat.
He was
exactly.
He was basically a 90s Democrat. Exactly. So that was the perception of him, probably pretty much from Democrats. They didn't really think of him as a political person. So I'm curious. Like, obviously it depends a lot. He would be still demonized by the media if he was a libertarian, and he would probably be hated still ultimately. But maybe in a different way, or maybe less so. I think about how malleable he is, because he's not somebody who has like strong like foundational views other than like populism. There's no real ideology or philosophy behind, or anything behind what he believes.
Americanism. I would say that's underlining, though they're not a great depth, like you said.
Right, broad, very very broad stuff. So him being such a broad, not the deepest thinker, makes me think, oh, maybe he would be malleable in the LP and be like, oh, this Mises guy, I like this economic. This makes sense to me. But again,
let's just say if he signs the pledge, he'll get my vote. Like if you sign the pledge, if you sign the Libertarian pledge and declare libertarian values, okay, you get my vote.
Yeah, we're getting into
that's what Lauren Boebert wouldn't do.
Yeah. Tell me about. I mean, I guess we should get into it because I know I'm taking up a lot of your time already. I'm curious about. Because that is super. Congratulations on running for Congress. That is very exciting. And you're in Lauren Boebert's district. What district number is that in Colorado?
District number 3. It goes all the way from the the northwest corner of the state all the way to the southwest corner, and then all the way to the middle of the state. So it includes almost half of the entire state, most of the mountains within it, and gerrymander is right around Pueblo. So Pueblo is included in that, and as a result, I'm included in that here.
And how many people are in this district? How they live there?
About 300,000 voters.
Damn.
And about half of them are in Pueblo. So I'm ideally situated. I'm gonna do a lot of mountain campaigning, don't get me wrong, but love the mountains. I grew up in the mountains, hiking the mountains, the Tian Shan in the Himalayas. Like that was the big thing, climbing these 16,000 mountain foot peaks. And so I love doing that here in Colorado too. And I'm really looking forward to spending a lot of time in the mountains this next year. That's probably one of the biggest selling points of running in this race. But I'm in Pueblo. I graduated from Pueblo County. I wasn't born here. I wasn't raised here. I won't claim those things. I was born in Colorado Springs, so just up the road. But I am of Pueblo. This is my home. This is my community. This is my business community. My passion is here. I'm bound to this space by investing in me and me investing in it. And that is a mutual relationship that I want to continue to support. And that next stage of support is through representation, because Pueblo isn't represented by Lauren Boebert or Adam Frisch. Rifle and Aspen. Like, how is Rifle and Aspen representing Pueblo? Nah, the great towns. I've been there. Love it. But Pueblo is the heart of this district. It needs to be the source of its representatives. Then not the heart is in central location, but the heart is in the largest population by far.
What is it? How are you guys not being represented or being dismissed or not? Like, is it like financially you're not getting the attention of what is it, or is it other things that are being neglected, or you're obviously we can get into, that can lead right into the pledge, and you could explain what that is. But yeah, tell me more about, like, I guess we're kind of touching on a little bit deeper, like why you're in this race and what's the problem with the Democrat and the Republican in there?
Let me rewind just a little bit to 2020. It was stolen. Big surprise. 2016 was as well, but Trump overwhelmed the cheat by default. Well, it wasn't popularized, the fact that he overwhelmed the cheat, but he did. In 2020, they removed the boundary to ensure he wouldn't. So the cap that they had in 2016 was the number of voters. They removed that cap, so they could have more votes than the number of voters in a precinct in order to achieve the metric that they needed to get Biden into office. And this was accomplished largely by the machines themselves, but also in coordination with the counting process and the registrations and the assignment of ballots and all this huge orchestration of racketeering. We sued Dominion Voting System, CTCL, Mark Zuckerberg, Priscilla Chan, Facebook, now Meta. We sued Jocelyn Benson, Gretchen Whitmire, Kathy Bookvar, Tom Wolfe, and my favorites from Georgia itself. We have Brad Raffensperger and Brian Kemp. And so we sued all these people for the cheat that they brought in 2020. And as registered voters, we formed a class that I was supporting the work of the class. I formed a nonprofit organization, Save Our Suffrage, to support the work of this class and to support this lawsuit. And so it was at this point that we were fighting against the state and recognizing that a lot of people on the right were red-pilled at that point. But every libertarian knew from the beginning that this was happening on both sides, and we were more focused on convincing the Democrats that, yes, you were complaining about this 6 months ago. You should be still complaining about this. And it was a really difficult journey to take. And obviously, January 6th and all of the people put in jail unlawfully and over that. So that whole context of experience brought me forward into 3 years of civil rights litigation and cutting my teeth on the idea of being an activist and organizing social and political movements. And so that's where I dedicated my life to this cause, and wherever it would take me, for sure. And so I never anticipated actually being a candidate myself, but having worked with so many candidates and having been frustrated by the lack of genuine nature coming from those candidates, and mostly Republican candidates who were trying to fight the machines and just not succeeding in that. And there's incredible exceptions to that. One of the people who I had the pleasure of working with, and she really outstanding in her morality and her conviction and everything, is Tina Peters. And so I got to know her last year and work with her closely on several lawsuits. And other Republican candidates, Summer in El Paso, and Dave, rest in peace, he recently passed away, and a number of other people who were really passionate about the machines. But I was beginning to see that the Republican Party is not the solution to this, because we approached Lauren Boebert, because she is Tina Peters' representative. Grand Junction is in my district. Lauren Boebert was her representative. Conservative, Republican, Freedom Caucus, would not mention the voting machines. She said, other people are talking about it. I don't need to. That's not your job, Miss Lauren Boebert. Your job is to represent our voice. And when Tina Peters, the clerk and victim of the setup by the federal government, this orchestrated setup, it's very much like a January 6th psyop that she was wrangled into to commit very specific felonies that were unnecessary. When that happened to her, she didn't have the necessary support from the Republican Party that she needed. She was ousted by Pam Anderson, a board member of CTCL, who we sued. Again, that's the organization who received $420 million from Mark Zuckerberg and invested it into municipal elections all around the country, including Denver and Boulder County and Broomfield and a bunch of other counties around Colorado. This is local to home, but I'm talking about thousands of counties, 5,000 counties across the country that were invested in by Mark Zuckerberg. And so they had a board member, Pam Anderson, implanted into the Republican Party to run in the primary against Tina Peterson and beat her by 60-30 ratio, despite having only a few hundred followers on Twitter. Okay, now we're getting far down the rabbit hole, but you're seeing how there cannot be a genuine freedom movement from the Republican Party, and I recognized this last year. I recognized the betrayal of Lauren Boebert. I took that personally because I organized all those recounts. I seeded that movement. I made that a thing, and she would not support me. She would not represent me. She was my representative, and she would not represent me. And so at the time, I didn't vote for her on the ballot. I left that spot blank. Now, come to find out, she only won by 543 votes. And so it went to an automatic recount. This seems like a real setup by the Secretary of State, Jenna Griswold, to have an opportunity, since we were contesting all of her recounts that she was doing in the primary, that 60-30 ratio, that was a 70-30 ratio, that was illegal. What happened? There was fraud in the primaries here in Colorado, specifically the Secretary of State race and several of the El Paso County races. But the key that came out of that was Jenna Griswold wanted to have an election put in place that would cover for the resistance that she got in the primary. So Lauren Boebert was the perfect candidate because she knew Lauren Boebert, as a deep state plant, would not resist having an automatic recount and would not resist or challenge any aspect of it, like we had sued her half a dozen times 6 months earlier. So they orchestrated it so that she would fall within the 0.5%, would still win. So she agreed to this, and she still got reelected. I left both blank. I didn't vote for either side, Lauren Boebert or Adam Frisch. And then the pledge happened. And the pledge happened before Beetlejuice. I want to make that point. She came out with an article. She called a reporter and said, I want to do a news story. And the reporter agreed. Most national congresswomen in the country, other than AOC maybe, their peers, I would say, on the level, and called up the reporter and did a story talking about how she will only swear to God and country and how the Libertarian pledge was beneath her. Well, you summoned me, and here I am.
I was going to say that you win, lose, or draw, whatever happens in the next year, you are going to be such a nightmare for these people. For Lauren Boebert, I'm sure the Democrat candidate that I forget the name that you're referring to, I'm guessing that's who that is, the other candidate in your district. Yeah. So Lauren Boebert she's not a Trump person. She's saying I don't know much about her, but she's like a an establishment deep state person. She was never a MAGA person. Is that what it is, or was she a someone who's working against Trump. What is her connection and level of support or not support for him?
She's Freedom Caucus, which puts her in the rank of Matt Gaetz and Jordan and Marjorie Taylor Greene and some of these other more hard right conservatives. But in speech only, and you don't actually see action in alignment with that philosophy. You don't see anti-war votes coming from her. She voted for the $14 billion to go to the genocide in Palestine. Not to aid it, but to continue it. That money went to the IDF. So she voted for war. People in District 3 don't want war. Pueblo is known as the home of heroes. Why? Because every time the government wants to commit a violent atrocity against the people, it summons blue-collar, hardworking, American principled people to come and spill their blood. And so we've got a lot of Medal of Honor winners here in Pueblo. Not because there's anything particular in the water, it's because they keep murdering our boys.
I like how you speak in candidate speak, but in righteous and proper and truthful and authentic and you do it well. I'm like I said, I'm ready to go.
I get distracted when I get passionate, so sorry I'm all over the place.
No, that's not. No, you're doing it. That's great. I appreciate it for sure. And what else should we cover about either highlights and professional personal experiences that you've had in the recent past, or anything else about Boebert or the race coming up that you'd like to mention?
You know what? I'll just mention this. I did have a transition. I'm not trying to hide this transition either. It's something I'm proud of. It's something I'm grateful for, because I've been at war for 3 years, and I thought this was just another battle of the war. So Wiley for Vengeance. That's how I started my campaign. WileyForVengeance.com. And that wasn't appropriate, and I changed it because I was out there with a sign that said peace, marching around the Capitol with a campaign that said vengeance. I couldn't do both, so I gave up the vengeance. And reflecting on that, that's necessary for all of us to give up our attachment to the outcome of whatever's happening here, to give up our need to be present to witness justice. Justice is absolute. Justice will happen. We don't need to be present for it. It belongs to God. And what we need to do is bring peace into our hearts and be prepared to reconcile with our brother, our neighbor next door, our friend, our rival across town, or the country that wants to invade us, and we want to invade them for whatever reason. If the people can take peace into their hearts, the state will become powerless. The state is war, war is the state. If the people want peace, there can be no war, and there can be no state. And that is a libertarian future. That is the best message we as libertarians have to offer, is peace. And at that point, I'm like, okay, I'm not a spoiler campaign anymore. I'm not going to vengeance to be far right to pull Republicans away from Lauren Boebert. That's why I started. Full transparency. I was there to be a spoiler candidate to wreck Lauren Boebert because she refused the pledge. But walking around the Capitol holding that sign, something changed in me. It was always there, but I accepted it. I'll say that. I accepted that my need to focus and prioritize and to live for love, peace, and harmony for our world. Because if I do anything else, I will get everything else. But that's all I want. That's all I want for my life. That's all I want for my family. That's all I want for my community and for my nephew and everybody. I think that's a universal desire, but we're so clouded again with those lower human instincts of wanting to get vengeance, wanting to make things right and be the agent of making it right. I called myself the Red Devil for a long time for obvious reasons. Red Devil, because I was the agent of God's vengeance. What a miserable state to exist in as the agent of God's vengeance. You're like the executioner, always wiping blood off your blade. I'm the fixer. I can't get things done in that capacity, but let's actually fix things, not just weave a greater web.
words are powerful and language is powerful, and I've been coming more and more around on the power of, I guess, what they call the neurolinguistics and the words we use in our brains to describe ourselves and our views and in your case, I guess, how you want to carry yourself in your actions and your goals. So I think that's a good thing. That's a healthy thing. And like, again, it's all about the process and the journey and not necessarily think about the results like you're saying. But I can't help but think about, like, you got you out there and your passion, it's contagious also. The love is contagious that you preach, and the ideas are also contagious. And if we can teach more and more people these ideas from a young age, if the government can teach reliance and what do you call it, their own version of propaganda from cradle to grave, we can do the opposite and imagine a world where people are being taught good propaganda from cradle to grave and being educated in a sincere way about the power of love and the power of peace, which are real things. And there's no limit on those. Like you were saying earlier, the pie is not fixed, whether it's what depth of spirituality we can achieve, or economically, individually and collectively, like, and the amount of peace we can have. What are we gonna have? Too much peace? What's gonna happen? We're gonna have too much peace. There's not like a limit on, like, you know what I mean? Because like we first do, and you don't have to do it. You can get, like, we libertarians often will talk about, like, let's get rid of the worst things first, like the bombing campaigns on civilians all over the world. Let's get rid of that, and then let's get rid of, like, you know,
what an idea.
some other, like, lower level violent things that, let's say, the government does. We can do that, and then, like, eventually, like, we can maybe get rid of the hate in our hearts.
Well, it has to start with our hearts. So
that's true. You are right.
There will be things that test that. There will be more incidents that inspire us to hate, and we have to have an overwhelming sense of love to overcome that whenever it rears its head.
What about? I ask everyone this. What about ghosts, aliens? Do we believe in those? Have we had experiences with either UFOs, including there, or whatever?
Oh man, I was doing so well.
There's no wrong or right answer for this.
No. So no. I definitely feel like there's significance in things we don't understand. Let me try to be real diplomatic about this.
Yeah, you can. Yeah, this, you don't have to speak in ghosts and aliens.
In the terms of ghosts or aliens, I wouldn't say that the Greys are here and the reptilians are doing this, but there are people of reptilian nature. There are people of a gray nature. There are people of ghostly natures, and there are people of skeletal natures and vampiric nature. All these, I don't know, what were the not quite fringe, but like cultural tales that we tell ourselves about existence just beyond reality.
Exist within us.
They do. Oh wow, that was brilliant. They do exist within us, and they do influence us because they are real in the sense that they're real in our mind. They're real in the way it affects us. It affects our behavior. It affects our language. It affects our understanding of ourselves. It affects our understanding of the world. And I think it's important for us to be open to perceive these things that are outside of what we can understand, because there might be a time when we do understand it. And I'm not saying I'm going to be able to explain the lights in the sky that go in a circular pattern. Oh, I do understand that now. I was just waiting for that moment. But maybe there was a feeling you had going through this spooky place, and maybe that feeling comes back to you in another time when you're in a situation and you're like, oh, I felt this way at this spooky place. Maybe I'm in a spooky situation. And so you act accordingly and you get yourself out of that situation. And in reflection, man, that was a really good call. So I think there's things outside of what we know, and magic is defined by that which is beyond the understanding of humanity. Not all of humanity, but the majority, and there are exceptions to that. So I'm sure there's people with exceptional understanding of the universe and how it works and operates. And my purpose is to focus on developing and understanding myself on political philosophy, on moral philosophy, on how we can combat the state, and more than just develop that myself. And the perfection of that development is then teaching it. So my purpose is to proselytize the philosophy of liberty and peace to the whole world, starting with my district and seeking to have them choose me to represent that philosophy to Congress and promote that again throughout the entire world. But I don't want to be the first libertarian elected to Congress. I know Justin Moss was elected Republican and switched, and people are like, you could be the first. I'm like, I don't want to be the first. I want to be one of many at the same time, simultaneous, parallel action. We need a lot of people all across the country to run for Congress at the same time to be able to stop these wars. One vote abstaining from a war is not, or voting no on wars is great, but we need 35. That's how many offices are available. So I encourage you, if you're watching this and your district is up for election, get in the race. We need you. I need you. I can't do this alone. I don't want to be elected alone. And I want to get into Congress and stand side by side with you and hold these peace signs and stop the military industrial complex from slaughtering more of our boys. So that's why I'm here.
Great. That's great. Good stuff. I think I share a similar personal experience or lack of personal experience with the ghosts and the aliens and that stuff. But at the same time, it's what it sounds like, I gather. But at the same time, being very open to possibilities, especially when it comes to things of that which I do not understand, but also open to the possibilities that others may be able to experience and understand things, and that I cannot relate to or haven't related to, or that never happened to me. So like, I think that's cool that you're open-minded in that regard.
Back in 2020, I started the Libertarian Party of Mars. So I'm definitely into space. I'm a big space nerd, and I'd love to be able to go to Mars and to ensure our principles take root there and dominate that space as well. So we need that too.
Yeah, I would also say, like, even though I haven't had, like, alien or ghost experiences, like, just in the last few years, I just sort of, like, come around, and others have also come around on the fact that motherfuckers are demons out there. Some of them are. They seem to be. Just like...
They're possessed.
Right. And the way you described, like, the vampires and demons...
Oh, they still drink blood. They do.
Reptile creature. Well, we can get it. This is getting kicked off YouTube, probably. But yeah, it's interesting. Even if like they're not literally, it's all good. Even if they're not literally these creatures or beings, like the fact that
they use that faculty of mind more dominantly. Yeah.
Right, and they take on the qualities of these things, and that manifests itself not in the best ways for humanity.
Like, is Mark Zuckerberg honestly not a reptilian? Come on, like. That's obvious. There's no way he doesn't have scales.
Right. But even if he actually doesn't have scales, what the hell is the difference? It's like what Tom, I don't know if you listen to like Tom Woods or much the podcast, but he will say things like, maybe it wasn't the plan to do XYZ thing to mess up society. But if you wanted to mess up society, like these are the exact steps you would follow. So like, if you're not
going to do anything else,
you may not be a reptilian, but you fucking quacking like a reptilian. On that note, where can people follow you, support you? Anything you want to share? Go for it.
Please follow me on Twitter, James for Peace, and then I've got a space under space just because James for Peace was taken, so I got that space under. James for Peace at James for Peace, and you could also follow my website, jamesforpeace.com. You can also email me, call me. Look forward to conversations with you, whether you're in my district or not. If you're passionate about liberty, I'd love to talk to you, and love to hear more about your story and how you're passionate and get that fire burning in you, that fire of liberty, which spreads so infectiously. I am asking for donations. If you're willing to support this cause, it's the opposite of war bonds is peace bonds. You're not going to get any return other than continued living. So that's a pretty good return on investment if you're interested in that. I'd invite you all to go to my website, James for Peace. jamesforpeace.com. There's a link there to donate. So please consider donating to my campaign. That money is going to protesting. It's going to Twitter advertisements, which we all know we need more Twitter advertisements. If you're not spending money on my campaign, please spend money on Twitter advertisements for the sake of Twitter to keep that up and going. Please support that. That's going to be spent on advertisements on Twitter, protesting at the Capitol. It's also going to be spent on hiring people to libertarians to go door to door and spread that message of libertarianism within the district. So we've got an amazing party here in Colorado. I just want to give a shout out to LP Co. We were able to get their Twitter account back a couple months ago, and we've been fighting hand in hand in this cause. And I'm really grateful for the support. It's been overwhelmingly positive. All the board members, Hannah, Alicio, Jacob, Force Mommy, Jessica Finska, and the other members in Colorado. She's not on the board, but she's such a great supporter. I just want to give a few shout outs, and I love you guys, and I appreciate that you're in this fight with me. And even though one election's over, it doesn't mean we can't get ready for the next one to really knock it out of the park and have our Javier Milei moment here in the United States. I'm just so euphoric coming out of that situation. So long way to say, please donate. jamesforpeace.com.
Very cool. Good stuff all around. And at least my perception, it seems like you guys in Colorado especially have such a great, maybe a formula is not the right word, but like a combination of like professionalism, but also like being not edgy based. I don't want to use those words, but like just speaking truth to power. You speak authentic truth to power.
We're some savages, yeah.
Yeah, you're savages, but you're professional savages. You're professional, you're professional, and you're savages. Those are two separate.
Thank you.
Two separate things. And like for the audio listeners, this man is wearing a suit right now. So we got that profession. We got peace, and we got professionalism, and we got great memes. We got it all in Colorado. The LP. Exciting things are happening. I'm looking forward to following the next year. That's going to be super exciting. You're going to be such a huge pain in the ass to everyone over there and then the Republican Party. It's going to be a lot of fun. But thank you again, James, and let's talk
Thanks,
soon.
Adam. Definitely. It's been a pleasure.
Peace. Later. So there you have it. Episode 147 with James Wiley. That was super fun, and I again appreciate his time. That man is truly an inspiration and makes me feel that much more motivated and inspired to just be a better person and try to make the world a better place. I know that sounds general and maybe trite, but nevertheless, anyway, for everything about this show, please, of course, head to peoplewelovepodcast.com, at peoplewelovepodcast on Instagram, at Adam Choit on Instagram and Twitter. If you'd like to follow me, adamchoit.com for all my projects, and links to all the social media and all that is there. But I think that's about all I got for today. I appreciate you guys listening. Thank you as always, and let's talk soon. Peace.